Today, Scottish Labour launched their manifesto. Is there anything new in it, and what are they not talking about? The Scottish Government face a £200 million bill for the ill-fated deposit return scheme. Will this scandal have an impact on the general election? And former Scottish Tory leader Ruth Davidson has taken a swipe at Nicola Sturgeon over her planned election night appearance on ITV. I'm Lorna Hughes, and joining me today is John Ferguson from Sunday Mail and Douglas Dickie from the Scottish Daily Express. This is Planet Holyrood.
It's important we look at the facts.
Politics has to be about service.
A modern form of national service.
The outcome, that's for the voters to decide.
Right, Scottish Labour have introduced their manifesto for change today. This is the party's promises to Scotland, obviously cover devolved issues, including things like cuts in waiting times, funding more hospital appointments, better deals for young people in the workplace. And that is front and centre on the manifesto book alongside Starmer. But most of these proposed policies have been trailed in the last few weeks. Did we learn anything new at all, John?
I don't think so. Like you say, most of the policy announcements here, as far as I know, there isn't anything new in this. There's the things that we were expecting them to say. They're going to cut waiting times. They're going to introduce a living wage, and they're generally the theme is repeating this word change. But, critics would say without really putting some flesh in the bones of exactly how they're going to do it. The reason they don't want to do that, of course, is because these sort of policies, once you start talking about the detail, people can start adding up how much they might cost. And, the Labour Party just don't want to go there. They don't want to give the Tories an opportunity to call them the party of high tax and spend. And so there's this metaphor that's been overused that Keir Starmer's sort of trying to carry a Ming vase across the finishing line in this race. And I guess you could say that Anas Sarwar, is helping him carry it. And the strategy is just don't do anything particularly controversial. Just, keep doing what you're doing and you'll win. I guess there will be a lot of more traditional Labour supporters that believe in higher tax and spending, who feel that, the vase isn't going to break now. It's pretty much indestructible, and they'd like to see Labour being a bit more forthright about just how they're going to fund some of these things, or a bit more clear about exactly what level this new living wage will be set at, and, just how much money they're going to be putting into the NHS to reduce waiting times. So, yeah, I think that's right. Nothing particularly new. And the question's going to be whether they, in the next couple of weeks before the election, give a little bit more detail, but I doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah, it sounds as if they are almost playing safe a bit. I'm sure they would welcome an election probably within the next week. As you say, it's a balancing act, isn't it, Dougie?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of said on this show many times that, Labour are in a position where, you just don't want to interrupt their enemies when their enemies are making so many mistakes, and maybe for the first time, their policies are going to come under scrutiny. Starmer's got through this entire campaign not saying very much at all, in all honesty, certainly not saying anything of any real substance. And, as John said, they're kind of nervy about putting out anything too detailed, because that's when people can start, to pick apart. There was one key difference, though, that could have an impact, and that was they appear to be at odds a little with, the UK-wide party on gender identity. This kind of debate that's obviously been raging very much in Scotland for the past few years, regardless of what side you're on it. It's played a part in bringing down 2 First Ministers already, and obviously down south, Keir Starmer says there would still be a need for a medical diagnosis before someone could legally change gender. There doesn't appear to be any mention of that in the Scottish Labour manifesto. I think that could be really interesting how that plays out, given how passionate a debate it's been. Labour obviously voted with the SNP and the Greens on it at Holyrood, but they managed to somehow kind of stay away from a lot of the fallout from it just by, kind of almost pretending that they didn't really, know what it was all about, and they've just kind of distanced themselves from it. This maybe shows that they're, are they going to go back down that route? And I mean, to me, that's just playing with fire, because it's something that really gets people's backs up.
I think it's deliberate. It's almost like the elephant in the room. Let's not talk about it at the moment because it's so tricky. And as you just identified, it's tricky because obviously we have a different government up in Scotland with slightly different views. I don't know. They're going to have to confront it. As you say, I mean, they had enough trouble the other day with taking VAT, status off of private schools, and effectively, that's quite divisive as well. But the gender stuff, I think it will, and I don't think they've been questioned, on it. Perhaps.
Yeah, I also wonder if just, Anis Sarwar is, one of the big accusations from the SNP is Anis Sarwar will just be Keir Starmer's poodle up here, and I wonder if it's an attempt to put some water, between them. I just think it's a really dangerous policy to have done it on. It'd been much easier for them if they just said nothing on it, to be frank, because as I said, it's quite a niche, it's quite a niche issue, this, but people, you see it online, it's a really, it can be quite a vicious debate. And
it's polarising. I mean, absolutely. And, I think Labour are kind of taking the view that it shouldn't be the most important thing, but as you've just said, it really is to some people.
Yeah,
and on both sides, some clarity on that probably, John, would be quite good as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that perhaps Anas Sarwar's a little more acutely aware of just how polarising this is, because, as Douglas was saying, it's been such a huge issue up here. I think one of the challenges they have is that out there among, ordinary voters, people aren't really that, if they even understand what the issues are around this, then they're not too bothered about it. They want children's health to be protected. They want to generally be respectful of people. They want women's rights to be protected. And, that I don't think that your average voter's really all that concerned beyond that. But the problem for political parties is within the party, within the kind of people who join political parties and are very politically motivated. This is a huge issue. As we've seen, it's completely divided the SNP, and there is the same internal debate in Labour. I think that, like I say, it would something that would be best avoided both at Westminster and Scotland if Labour possibly can. And if they need to have this debate and get to the bottom of what their policy positions on it is going to be, it'd be far better to do that outside of the general election, when hopefully the heat's taken out of it a bit.
Because even though this is a devolved issue, the parties have been quite happy to use devolved issues to fight this election on. So Labour can't really complain if a devolved policy ends up costing them votes. I think John's right. I think your average punt on the street probably doesn't really care that much about it. But,
they did care when they saw Isla Bryson.
Yes, they did.
And they got it.
Polls would tell you that people are broadly not supportive of the gender reforms as they were put forward by the SNP and Greens. But I don't think it would be for the vast majority of people, I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker. But this election in Scotland is going to be on a knife edge. There's going to be a lot of seats separated by under 2,000 votes. So it could yet prove crucial in certain areas. If just a few hundred votes either way, it could end up costing somebody a seat.
And as you said, Douglas, I mean, two former First Ministers. Certainly, they're no longer in post, partly, without a doubt, as a result of this. So, and Anas Sarwar doesn't want to go there at the moment.
I think that when broadly aren't too bothered, what they do want to know is that their political leaders understand the difference between a man and a woman.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's what they need to be very clear on.
Yeah, and it's quite simple because people perceive that as if you can effectively tell a lie about that, then how can we trust you on anything else?
Yeah, I think people see it as just a fundamental competence, don't they? You can't trust this person to know that most simple thing, then how can you trust them to run the economy and the NHS?
It'll be interesting if it is brought up a bit more though, Douglas. The only other thing that kind of struck me was this football regulator. I don't know if either of you saw this, that they want to introduce a football regulator, which I think they're going to do in England as well. And I think it's to do with to prevent clubs from bankruptcy or, mismanagement. I'm not sure. Maybe is that likely to? I don't know. Your average football fan be interested in that?
No, I don't think the government should be sticking its beak into football, and I say that as a football fan, quite frankly. No, that's not for me. I'll say that.
Sounds a bit like having some kind of VAR regulator.
Now I know how bad that's gone down. So no, right. Listen, we have to talk about the deposit return scheme again, but this is because BIFA, the waste management company, who were involved in delivering or going to deliver, particularly the big trucks to deal with the DRS, are now suing the government, as actually Hannah Roger revealed in the Sunday Mail. Now, I think I've just had another quick look, and it's more than £200 million they want. Now, we're not quite into ferries territory, but we could be getting there. I mean, nobody's been held accountable for this fiasco, which it is, and the taxpayers are picking up the bill. So how is this going to go down? Is this going to be another problem for the SNP and the Greens? Although obviously the Greens are not in government anymore, but is this another problem that could affect the election campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one to watch. It could unravel spectacularly for the Scottish Government and the SNP. As you say, Hannah Roger, a colleague, revealed this story a couple of weeks ago. It's now being picked up by the BBC and others. Just the bill in relation to BIFA could be around 200 million. But as you said, that I think we could easily end up in the ferry fiasco sort of territory when you consider the fact that that's just one company who are claiming a financial loss in relation to this scheme. There are hundreds, literally, but probably thousands of other companies, everything from small shops to alcohol, booze producers. People spent an absolute fortune preparing for this scheme that they were told by the government was all signed and sealed and definitely on its way. If we're talking about who's accountable, I think that Lorna Slater was clearly the minister who was in charge of this stuff. She will argue that this was Westminster interference. It was Westminster playing politics by kiboshing a Scottish scheme.
Alistair Jack, yeah.
The Scottish Government, Alistair Jack came in and said, look, it's not happening. You don't have the correct approvals in terms of the Internal Markets Act. Whether or not that was Westminster playing politics doesn't really change the fact that Lorna Slater should have had every single I dotted and T crossed before instructing companies to spend hundreds of millions of pounds to prepare for this thing. She was insistent, even when it became clear that there was huge problems, that this would be going ahead, and people kept on spending money. So it's a massive, massive screw up. It's unclear now, whether the UK government is ever actually going to follow suit with their own deposit return scheme. But there's the basic scandal of doing this, and the thing that makes it even worse is that so many people, including newspapers, were pointing out the obvious flaws for months and months and months, and they were completely ignored. The attitude seems to be all just plow on and somehow the thing will work out, and it really didn't. So yeah.
I mean, Douglas, do you think that this is again one of these issues that people will say this is, you know, the Scottish government again unable to deliver something? You know, they're incompetent, they can't do it, and they're also not accountable. So therefore, why, you know, and it will be seen in that, you know, as part of why they don't want, or, you know, are definitely not happy about having more SNP MPs in Westminster.
Yeah, because I mean, the line between devolved and reserved issues in this election campaign, I was going to say it's been blurred, but to be honest with you, it's been blown to smithereens. There is no line now. So this will have, you know, other parties will use this in their campaigning. What's really interesting to me is that Lorna Slater's no longer a government minister. Her party are no longer in government. I think the Greens launch their manifesto tomorrow. I wonder if she might feel emboldened to try and defend herself a bit more stoutly on this, and we might find a wee bit more about what happened behind the scenes. I can't imagine, you know, imagine she had Humza Yousaf's full support when she just ploughed on with this. I'm wondering if she'll try and deflect blame from it now. She's never been held for it. It's just, it's quite unbelievable. And I think we are in kind of Ferry's territory, or we're getting to Ferry's territory, definitely with this one. And it's going to cost, you know, the taxpayer millions of pounds.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably say that, you know, she was surrounded by civil servants as well. What went wrong there, and why was she not listening? She clearly gave Biffa, you know, a verbal kind of contract that this was definitely going ahead. I mean, I don't think for a second that they would have contemplated this action if they weren't absolutely sure that it was.
Yeah, I mean, for me, she's, I've said it before on here, I think she may be the worst minister in devolution history, in the history of devolution. She was clearly out of her depth on it, and
I know it's this thing though, Douglas. I mean, you can argue that with quite a lot of ministers. You know, we give them these jobs. They are, you know, usually not an expert in whatever portfolio it is that they've got, and they've got these huge budgets, you know, and, you know, again, that's when you start looking at our elected officials and asking yourself, you know, who are these people? You know, could we not get somebody better? But anyway, we'll see. I'm sure we'll see. And as you say, when they launch their manifesto, whether or not there's any DRS or mention of any DRS type scheme in there.
I would be surprised if she wasn't quizzed on it. She's no longer in government. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe she might feel a wee bit more emboldened to come out swinging on it.
She can't really complain about the support that she got through the whole thing from Humza Yousaf as First Minister and the Scottish Government generally. You know, even when it became clear that the whole thing was unravelling, she wasn't sacked. There wasn't really a.
I'm wondering more. Will she try to say that she was almost used by them to kind of ferment this big argument with Westminster, and Humza kind of pushed her into it and insisted that it go ahead? You know, I mean, who knows? I'm just kind of.
I think it does speak to the electorate again that you know, things are not delivered, or we're not told the full story, or right at the, you know, at the end, we're told this isn't going to happen. And I think the electorate just think, you know, this is useless. You know, if I wasn't doing my job properly, I would get the sack. So I think it feeds into that malaise, isn't it? Of like, no wonder people just go, all politicians are the same. I'm fed up with this already.
I mean, I think you make a good point, Lorna, about what were the civil servants doing. You are going to put up a defence for Lorna Slater. It does look like she was, that the civil servants have missed the fact that the correct exemptions that they needed weren't in place. And to be honest, it does look like Alistair Jack has fairly opportunistically saw an attack line on this. He saw that the scheme wasn't going well, it wasn't popular, and that he could come in and kibosh it, that the leverage was there for him to do that. You know, it does seem like there's something in it, that whether or not the exemption was in place, surely the UK government could have made clear sooner that so that I think there is blame on all sides, both politically and in the civil service. But at the end of the day, we have elected ministers in these jobs because someone needs to take responsibility. The buck needs to stop somewhere, and I think that's where Lorna Slater needs to hold her hands up and say, you know, whether or not I'm completely to blame for this, I'm the person that needs to take the blame. Yeah.
There's an old-fashioned view, though, these days, John, obviously, since very few of them take any responsibility. But talking about somebody who's getting certainly very vocal on an issue, Ruth Davidson, the former Scottish Tory leader, has been making some comments about former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's appearance as a pundit on ITV, which will be on the evening of the election, obviously as the first kind of exit polls are coming out. Now, I don't think I've heard her say comments like this before, but, you know, she's actually saying that she's looking forward to watching Nicola Sturgeon's face as her dream of independence dies, which, John, is this a wee bit close to the bone, a bit vicious, or is she entitled to say that?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite vicious, wasn't it? Obviously no love was lost between Ruth Davidson and Nicola Sturgeon politically. I mean, I think it was pretty vicious. I guess the other way of looking at it was it's almost a kind of statement of fact that Nicola Sturgeon signed up for this job. As far as we know, she will be paid for it. You think it's a funny gig to have taken on, because we are expecting the SNP to do pretty abysmally in this election, and if that happens, she's going to be there. There was obviously this famous viral footage of Nicola Sturgeon the previous election where you see her absolutely ecstatic at winning a seat. I think
it was the Lib Dem seat, was it not?
Amy Callaghan beating Joe Swanson.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And it does feel like this time round the tables are going to be well and truly turned, and we're going to see Nicola Sturgeon becoming gradually more upset at the SNP losing all of these seats that they hold at the moment. So, I think that was pretty pointed. But it's going to be an interesting thing to watch Nicola Sturgeon have to give live commentary on the downfall of her own party, a downfall that many, many people, including very senior people within her own party, must now feel she is in large part responsible for.
So, Douglas, do you think Ruth has got every right to say this?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think there was much wrong with what she wrote, to be honest. I think there'll be a lot of people hoping that that's the case, that you know, the SNP have a miserable night and we'll be able to tune in and see Sturgeon. I wonder if Ruth is after a bit of revenge. She done election coverage one year when the SNP mopped the floor with everyone, and she had to sit there and kind of take it throughout the night. I'm sure there's a few Nats who enjoyed tuning into that to see her face. So I mean, I don't know. didn't see a great deal, wrong with what she said. Whether it happens in the night, I think we're at a stage now where the expectation is the SNP is going to do so badly that if they were to lose, say, 20 seats, they would probably view that as a successful night,
Yeah.
And I think it depends now. The SNP will be resetting, and Nicola Sturgeon will know this. They'll be rethinking what kind of constitutes a good, a good night for them. And if they hang on to, say, 25 seats, I think they'll paint that as something of a, it wouldn't be a victory, but I think they would cling to that as a victory.
Well, she's the master of good communication,
Yeah.
so it'll be very interesting to see how, she does deal with that. But I also don't think she's got much of a poker face sometimes. So I think that it could be very, very difficult. So do you think she's doing this for money then, John? Or does she really want to have to sit there and watch what could be the demise of, the party that she was in charge of for a long time?
I mean, it's difficult to imagine it's just about the money. Like, obviously there's the various legal difficulties that we know are ongoing, but you've got to think she'll still be fairly comfortably off. She earned a lot of money as First Minister of the country. She'll have pensions, and she's got the money coming in from our book deal, as far as we know. So I don't think it would purely be the money, even though obviously it's a nice bit of work. But I think it's maybe more just someone who they're used to being the public eye, and they like being in the public eye, and that she likes attention. There was obviously turned up at the SNP party conference in Aberdeen last time round. It's difficult to think that was, that Humza Yousaf really thought that it would have wanted that.
Yeah, she kind of took the shine off of him, didn't she?
It's kind of thrusting her forward, and I think that's probably the biggest reason for her going on the TV to do this. But it does you think, she is inevitably going to be questioned live on air on, just what's gone wrong. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how she answers that. As you remember, when she resigned, she talked about what a great position she was leaving the party in, and how, whoever took over was going to go on to win elections, that she was absolutely convinced that had she stayed, she would have been able to go on to win elections. Now, she must have known at that point that there was a huge amount of problems about to open up for the SNP, and that what she was saying just wasn't true, that there were going to be serious issues coming up in future elections, a lot of them as a result of decisions that she's made. And so it will just be very interesting to see whether she's going to own any of that on the night, or whether she blames Humza Yousaf, whether she, is she going to blame John Swinney, or is she going to accept that she herself has to, take the lion's share of the responsibility for the demise of the SNP? Because as much as we're now on our second First Minister and leader of the SNP since she resigned, really what you're seeing in this election is the public giving their assessment on her time in power.
I think this is it's all about exposure, really. She clearly sees her future, in TV. She's appearing in Lost Women. She turns up at book festivals. You get the feeling she would turn up at the opening of an envelope. And I think what she's doing is she's trying to boost her own brand. She's trying to get back on side with the public. But as you say, Lorna, she doesn't have a great poker face, so that could backfire for her. This is all part of it.
And it will.
Yeah, I mean, she's going to stand down. She'll almost certainly stand down in 2026. So I think this is all part of her big farewell tour, and then she'll move on to the next phase of her life. The branch form stuff means I don't think there's any chance she's going to get her much dreamed of job with the UN. So she's had to go to kind of plan B and become almost a media a media personality. I think, you know, we're going to see her on the Celebrity Chase soon enough. You know, she's going to turn up. Who knows? She might turn up in the jungle. But I think she definitely, I think she definitely sees her future as, you know, kind of political TV personality almost.
I think it's a shrewd move by ITV, you know, because it, you know, it is box office, but it's going to be uncomfortable viewing. I mean, there's a bit of me that feels a bit sorry for her because I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, when they get these pundits in, they're there for a good few hours. You know, they are, you know, it's going to be really tricky. So,
we'll put it like this: I always watch the election coverage on the BBC, but I won't be on July 4th.
I think there'll be a lot of people in exactly the same boat in Scotland. Yeah. Listen, thank you both very much for joining me today. Planet Holyrood is available every weekday during the general election campaign. You can listen to this episode and previous episodes on Spotify or watch on the Daily Record YouTube channel.
It's important we look at the facts.
Politics has to be about service.
A modern form of national service.
The outcome, that's for the voters to decide.